Thank you very much. So thanks for joining our event. This is this is the last one this year, obviously. We do this monthly, and the purpose of this is to ensure that homeowners are educated on things that are normally not discussed. And so sometimes this falls on the shoulders of a realtor, and then the realtor is not educated on these things, and then the realtor has to go out and do their research and talk to vendors and things of that nature. And so the purpose of this is to make sure that there's some level of knowledge, um, a bit more deeper that the homeowner has. Now, I don't want to bore everyone with technical jargon and things like that. So these presentations just touch upon essentially the basics of these concepts. So in the past, we talked about financing, we talked about whether to move or build, and if you or stay or build or move, and if you do make those decisions, what sort of things you have to be cognizant of. And so we like to arm you with knowledge that you can use to protect yourselves and steer away from potential pitfalls that can cost you potentially several $100,000. And, we have examples of this where folks have purchased lots and the lots have been in a floodplain, or they have RPAs, whereas before they wanted to build a 11,000 square foot home. And then when it came to due diligence after purchase, they discovered the lot was not buildable. So things of that nature, we like to cover topics like that because we like to have folks be educated and protected. So the topic this go around is energy efficiency. This is deep and dear in our hearts. We are seeing changes. I mean, this is data. Some people are deniers, some people are acceptors. I am data driven, and I just see a pattern. The sun comes up, that's a pattern. The temperature goes up, that's a pattern. And so energy efficiency in general is a good thing. So that's what we're going to cover here. Just a little disclaimer, whatever, we are experts in what we do as a general contractor, a design build. We've been doing this since '87. And so we're a family-owned business. So it's very, high communication, high education, constantly learning from every project. And we are experts, but what we say here is not binding. Anything that's legal in nature or anything like that, you should go, hire a lawyer and, have them address any legal questions that you may have. Anything technical in nature, we recommend that, those be discussed with, if it's a mechanical issue, go talk to a mechanical engineer and things like that. If there's any other deeper issues that a general contractor needs to answer, you can come to us or other general contractors and, ask them. But whatever we're sharing here, it's just skim of it. And so, we want to make sure we're not providing any advice or anything that we're held to, but just providing you the education. A big thank you always goes to Spring Hill Real Estate, JDM Title. JDM Title always provides me with feedback. I send them, addresses and say, hey guys, can you do a quick title search? They're very fast. Angelo over there getting back to me the same day. Or sometimes if it's a more complicated thing within 48 hours. And so we appreciate your help. And Spring Hill, we thank you for providing us the real estate and so forth, for doing our presentations and the marketing in our company. So I'm with Spring Hill Real Estate. I'm a licensed agent and with Spring Hill, and I'm also an employee of K1 Design Build, which is a general contracting firm. We design custom homes and we design and build additions and things like that. So second floor additions, rear bump house, and we do a lot of technical things as a general contractor too, and we learn from every project, as I mentioned. All right. So what are we going to talk about this meeting? I said energy efficiency. This is just a outline of, what we're going to talk about. And we want to kind of go over some of the things that, when you're in these cities, Arlington, Fairfax, Vienna, you go through the neighborhood and they have, if you do a survey, they have some sense of what energy efficiency means, but it's typically not what really a efficient home means. It has, in fact, nothing to do with an efficient home. So we want to go over that and then provide some, information on what you need to be cognizant of in an existing home or a new home that you're looking to purchase so that, again, you're informed. This is all for you. This is for homeowners. This is for folks who are looking for buying homes and things they need to watch out for. This is for realtors who are advising their clients on, purchasing new homes and things like that. All right. So a typical view of a home, again, this is our experience based on speaking with folks out there. They think, oh, okay, a more energy efficient home is solar panels. Okay. Or maybe we'll call, the local power company and we'll have them change our light bulbs to LED bulbs, which is fine. We'll get renewable energy, then maybe that'll make things better. That's fine. These are fine. But in a typical energy efficient home, these are fine, but this is not where we need to focus. There's more. And so let's go over a story of an uncomfortable home. So an energy inefficient home is uncomfortable in general, right? So now is a perfect time. If you're in a home that was built several decades ago, or maybe a home that wasn't, built that long ago, but maybe the workmanship is not appropriate, in this home, you feel a draft. You'll be reading a book on a sofa. There's a window behind you, and you feel a draft coming in the back of your neck, or you sit near the wall and you feel the wall. It's cold. You feel a draft coming through doors, bottom of the door, side of the door, or maybe if it's a glass door with a full light that, you feel considerable amount of uh, temperature difference. Then you look at your energy bills and come, November, late October, your energy bills are spiking up. And then there is the more serious stuff, right? We talk about comfort. So these are comfort things, right? Financial comfort. There is feeling of comfort in the home. And then there's potential hazards. So there's issues with, if the home, we talked about workmanship, if the home was not built correctly, there were shortcuts taken, or if the home is older and some of these systems and components are starting to fail, then you start dealing with mold. Black mold can be hazardous. If the appliances are older, you could have carbon monoxide issues potentially in the home and many other things. So, there is financial, there is comfort, and then there is hazards. So this is why we want to make sure you're educated. That picture, by the way, was generated by AI. I don't know why it generated it in such an angry way, but that's a home that's not comfortable at all. So what makes the biggest impact in a home? What makes an energy efficient home? This is what we're going to run through quickly. So the building envelope, right? When we talk about an envelope, just like a letter, it's got, the exterior of the home and what's it made of, right? And the exterior of the home, we have insulation types. I want to go over that. The word sheathing, a lot of homeowners and realtors don't know what sheathing is, but sheathing is essentially the framing cover of the exterior of a home. So when you see framing go up, you're driving by a construction site, you either see the green boards or you see the plywood looking boards, particle boards, and that's what we call sheathing. And so there's that, there's the exterior sheathing and the vapor barriers that go over it. I want to go over appliances. And these are things that suck up a lot of energy if it's not addressed. So mechanical units, your water heater, and then most importantly, also out of all of these, you may have solid walls and insulation, but it means nothing if you have these big openings, which we call windows and doors, and those are inefficient in your home. If that's the case, then those have to be addressed, because then the insulation in your walls doesn't mean anything. So as we go through this, if you guys have any sort of questions or anything, raise your hands and I'm more than happy to stop. You can, Natalie will facilitate this. Okay, so building envelope. State of insulation. So what is, insulation is one thing that we talked about. I've included a few pictures here of what we've done in the past, which I'm really happy about. And it's made a huge difference. But essentially, where is insulation most important? If you go in a home right now, in cold weather, well, it's kind of warm today, but when it starts dipping down in the 40s, 30s, 20s, your heat escapes your home through the attic. Mostly, it just heat rises. So if you don't have sufficient insulation in a home, then in the attic, then that's bad. Secondly, in your walls, right? And then also in your basement. So when you go in a lot of basements, whether they're finished or unfinished, you should see some level of insulation on the exterior walls. There's, the insulation that you nail to the wall. I think one of them is called silver coat. There's other panel installations that can be installed on the wall. So in the picture here on the right bottom, we built this new home and the client wanted a super efficient home. I'm really proud of this home and how tight it is. But we actually ended up putting 2-inch panel insulation under the basement slab. And so that, things like that, usually you put it 2 feet on the outside if the slab is at grade level, at dirt level. But here, this is actually inset in the ground by several feet, but we ended up putting panel insulation on the slab anyway for additional protection. So when you look at the insulation in homes, so if you go look at an older home, what sort of things do you need to look at when you're considering insulation? There is blown-in insulation, the fluffy stuff. And so you want to look at that in the attic, and, we're not training you to be home inspectors, but these are things that you need to be cognizant of, especially in this market where it's so tight that you have competition and other folks are putting in bids where they're putting in offers with no contingencies on inspection or anything like that. And if you guys are interested on moving forward and putting an offer in a home without a contingency, at least be armed with these things. Go to the attic, look in the attic. If it's blown insulation, see if it's settling or see if it's uniform. If it's blown in insulation, you can measure it, right? There's older stuff, cellulose, and that's, the R value of that, it all depends on what kind of, if it's stuff from 40, 50 years ago, then I recommend that it be changed out if it's been sitting for several decades. But if it's blown insulation that was recently put in, it's the fluffy white stuff, fiberglass blown. You can go in there and stick a ruler in there and see if it's more than 16 inches. If it's uniform and if it's more than 16 inches, then you're talking, close to R40 insulation. And that's pretty good. That's pretty good for our region. Our region is considered a moderate region, and so that's sort of our value is good in your attic. So you make sure that there's no gaps. You make sure there's no compressed areas, right? Sometimes if you have appliances in the attic, the technicians will go in the attic to maintain, and then they'll end up traipsing all over the blown in insulation and it gets compacted down, and so that's a problem. So you may need to get more insulation in there. If there is cellulose and things like that, you can opt to get more blown in insulation on top of that, or vacuum everything up and then put it all new insulation. Another thing that we really love is closed cell and open cell sprayed insulation. So if you look at this picture on the bottom right, this exact same home, this is actually the second level. And we have 2x8 walls over here. And we almost filled the entire space of the 2x8 wall with open cell blown insulation. We did the same thing in the attic. So in the attic, we put OSB sheathing that we talked about, and then we blew insulation on the bottom of that. So this home is a completely tight, sealed, well-insulated home. That's another thing that we like about spray insulation, is that it provides that sealing. That sealing is amazing. This home is really tight. And so, and then when you're going to look at these homes, there are certain areas that you need to be aware of. And, it's going to be hard if the home is finished. Obviously on second floor and other places, or main level, you can't really do this because it's finished. But sometimes if you have an unfinished basement, mind the floor joist in the ceiling and look at where the floor joists are sitting on the exterior walls and check for insulation in those areas. A lot of homes don't have insulation at the end of the floor joists where the floor joists are sitting on the exterior walls. You can actually look up and see. And so, or maybe your existing home doesn't do that. And if you put insulation there, it makes a big difference. The purpose of insulation is to slow down the temperature changes. If the weather is cold outside and you're warm inside, you want the insulation to slow that down so that your home doesn't change temperatures abruptly. And this gives your mechanical systems enough time to catch up and condition the system. So I think that's insulation. I think we covered that enough. The next thing after insulation, and this is really important, and in our region, this actually matters more than insulation. There is new code that the new building code requires significant amount of insulation, to the point where for some jobs, we just have to go with sprayed insulation that I'm showing here on the right, in that ceiling, just because the inches of insulation, if you want to use blown-in insulation, it's just not possible in an attic. And so we're going to see, going forward with this new building code, that a lot of buildings are going to require something like this. If you see my cursor here. To the left, this is something, this is an attic that's got inappropriate insulation. This is the old cellulose that I was talking about. The roof looks really, it's just a regular roof sheathing. It's not sealed. But on the right, that's a beautiful roof over there because two issues have been addressed. One is the insulating factor, and two is the air barrier. That sprayed insulation has provided both. And, you can actually opt to do that in a crawl space here too. On the bottom, you can see a home that we applied open cell. Yeah, it looks like open cell. Is it open cell? I think it's open cell. Yeah, insulation to the between the floor joists. the floor joists here were, I think these were 2x12s. We ended up filling them, and this home was built in the early 1950s or late 1940s. It made a huge difference in the front of this house. And so, uh, actually, I got a little confused. Sorry, we're still continuing on insulation. So if you go to a home and it doesn't have enough insulation in the walls, what do, right? There are many solutions. One thing we did in this home, you come to 1,000 square foot Rambler. It's got brick exterior. Inside, it has 1 inch plaster walls that reside on furring strips. What do you do with that sort of home? One solution is to do this. You see this home over here. You can put these furring strips on the exterior of the home. Here, it's a little different. We use the furring strips here for a different purpose. But you can install furring strips, and then you can put insulation either between insulation panels between the furring strips or in front of the furring strips, and siding goes over it. You may have to put additional furring strips in front of the siding depending on the type of nails that it gets technical. I don't want to go there, but there's one solution where you can put panel insulation on the outside of the home and then put hardy siding and things like that over it. Or if it's vinyl siding, you can opt for vinyl siding that has insulation embedded in it. And any additional R value makes a difference. There have been homes that have had no insulation, only bricks, in some cases, only sheathing, and you have the studs behind it. And just, R5 or even R3 additional insulation has made a big difference. And so, so that's insulation. I think we covered that. Any questions? Okay. All right, let's move on. So I want to talk about air infiltration. Air infiltration is very important. Like I said earlier, air infiltration in our region is more important than insulation because we're in a moderate region, which means it does get cold, but if it does get cold, like last January, it doesn't last long. It's not like Sandusky where you go there and it's cold and it remains cold to the point where the lake freezes. We don't get that here. The Potomac may freeze, but it'll thaw eventually. So what is air infiltration? Air infiltration is when unconditioned air enters the home, puts additional stress on your systems that are supposed to condition it, or conditioned air in the home escapes. So then you're warming up or cooling down the neighborhood. And so that's not ideal, right? Your utility bills go up. There's additional stress that goes in that the system experiences, and it's a safety hazard too, and I'll cover that soon. So where are some potential areas where air infiltration takes place? And we've shown it here. And some people don't think about this, but there's something called a stack effect, right? Your chimney. Chimneys are big. I mean, it's nice having that fire inside of your home. You lose a ton of energy through your chimney. Warm air just gets sucked out there, and it's called stack effect. A system develops where through rising heat, it's just this chimney just sucks air out of your home. Some people opt to seal the chimney, if they're not using it. But chimneys are a huge culprit in air infiltration. There are other things. So if you have exhaust fans that don't have dampers or anything like that, you're losing all that air. If you have recessed lights in your attic that are leaking, you can either get vented down or you can get vented up, and then there's gaps in the walls and things like that, or even a hose bib. If it's not sealed, when you go and inspect the exterior of the home, inspect those penetrations into the home and make sure they're sealed, either foamed, caulked, and things of that nature. So those are important, and these lead to excessive energy consumption. These are things that can be addressed. You can get a home inspector to come and check it out. You can do a cursory look yourself and see where these gaps are potentially, raise it to the seller, um, or check it in your own home and see, where these things are happening. All right. So, right. Um, so common leak points are windows, doors, and penetrations, as we discussed. Some of the things you should check for, obviously, is weather stripping in doors. Look for gaps around pipes, ducting, and the chimneys. And there are ways to address, these areas. There's this sort of envelope sealing, if it's not done right, it can have really dire consequences. So one picture that I'm showing here is from a project that we were involved with, recently, and look what's happened here. The entire sheathing has disintegrated. Why? There wasn't appropriate flashing that deflected water away from here. The entire insulation in this area has just disintegrated. And this was end to end in the back of the home. We had to repair it. There was termites and so forth. And so this was not a case in which the home was old. This was a case in which the workmanship was not done right. So a home inspector can catch that. There are several mechanisms of making sure that the exterior of the home is sealed. There is actually fluid applied mechanisms, and then there is more mechanical means. So again, I don't want to get too technical here. The purpose of this is just, if you're building a new home, you should be aware of these things. If your contractors design build usually don't share these things with the homeowner. They just focus on layout, where's your kitchen going to be, where's your pantry and things like that. But they don't tell you that, listen, if you want a comfortable home, you should consider this or this. They don't normally give you those options. And so I'm showing you two options here. You guys have all seen these green boards, right? You see a construction site with these green boards. These are zip boards. They're designed to provide a air barrier. The tape in between them is zip tape, so that seals all the seams and things like that. And you see that zip tape around the windows to prevent any sort of water from entering in and rotting. All that material is protected with that wood. And then, so that's the mechanical. Then there is the fluid applied. So the red around this window is similar to the black that you see here. The tape that they put is just, this is all liquid and paste. And it's significantly more expensive than what you see here. But it has its own this material, it has properties where if you nail something into it, it's so rubbery that it'll actually wrap the nail. So your envelope seal is not impacted. And when you do fluid applied, it's just, there's no tape for the tape to come undone. So there's pros and cons. Again, I don't want to go too deep into this. So this is air sealing. Air sealing, there is not only sealing the house, but it's protecting the building envelope and making sure that things are in place so that stuff like this doesn't happen. Because what happens when this happens, you've impacted the insulation, you've impacted the seal, mold is forming, and it's just not a good deal. So if you do have a leaky home, as far as determining if it's leaky, we're very data driven. So it's good to get it tested and figure out where the sources of those leaks are. And yes, there are ways to address them without having to rip out all your ducting, all your walls, and things like that. There's cost-effective ways of doing that. And one way, uh, these two companies are just one example of what is out there in the market. It's what we're familiar with. But in order to get the data, not sure if you guys have seen this, but you can actually put a fan in one of your main entryways into the home and change the pressure in the home and see where potentially air is entering the home. And so you create a vacuum inside the home, and then you go check for leaks and you identify where those leaks are. You can either address that with caulking, foam, or whatever, but it's a systematic way where you run the system, you create a vacuum, you go address it, you do it again, you do it until the numbers improve. And that makes a big difference. It has to be done, I would say, once every few years, because eventually those remediations that you've done, they could come undone. I'm not sure what the data is out there on in terms of how often it should be done, but these are some of the vendors. I've included the links here too, and we will be posting this on our website so you can access it later. You can contact these vendors and ask those technical questions of them. The other issue with a home and air leakage is not just with the exterior envelope, but it's also with the ducting of your system. You could get a brand new mechanical unit, but you just feel like it's just not doing its work, right? Or maybe it's much louder. And so you go look at the ducting, you can test the ducting, and the issue may be that maybe the CFMs went up, the flow of air in the ducting went up, but that ducting is just not able to support it because it's leaking. And so either the CFM of the machine have to get adjusted or those ducts have to be sealed. AeroSeal has a system, and you can go check out their videos where you can address that. So what AeroBarrier does, it's really neat. It's instead of going and foaming everything and caulking, it's a more holistic approach. So you change the pressure of the home, you pressurize the home, you spray this aerosolized, it's like a caulk material, into the air, and then this finds the holes in your home, and it continues accumulating in that hole until that area is sealed, and it does a fairly good job. I don't know how often this has to be done, once every 5 years, once every 10 years, but you can talk to them. And AeroSeal is essentially the same thing. You spray this inside of the ducting, and it finds the leaks and it addresses it. So, all right. So we covered air sealing. Let's go into appliances. You don't hear these too often when you're talking to homeowners. Now, homeowners expect that, okay, I'm going to buy a home. Okay, I set the thermostat. It's fine. Let's go. You don't hear them talking about these things like Sears and AFUE and things like that. So I just want to cover this quickly to make sure that you're educated on these things. And I have a lot of content, so I apologize. I'm going to run through this, and these slides are going to be available to you. And so we know that a well-conditioned home is a comfortable home, and it's a safe home. When appliances get older, especially with furnaces and things like that, one of the things that technicians do is they check for the carbon monoxide level. So within a 10 feet boundary of the machine, they'll come and check and see if there's any carbon monoxide leakage. And most likely with older units, you will detect carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is dangerous. It can cause suffocation. And so it's important that units get checked on a regular basis. We are big fans of heat pumps. we're in a moderate region. The heat pumps have come such a long ways in terms of efficiency, quietness. Heat pumps are all electric. There's no gas or fuel or anything like that that they use. And so we're big fans of that. There are cost savings if you move to heat pump, if you're switching from gas to heat pump from a tax perspective. If you're going from a SEER that's lower than 16 to 16 and above, there's additional tax savings there. And I've included some links further in this presentation for you to visit and see what those tax savings are. But what does SEER mean, right? SEER means season, it stands for Seasonal Energy Efficiency Rating. And it's almost like I put an analogy here. It's like gas mileage in your car, right? How fuel efficient is your car? How much fuel is it using? The analogy that I used here is miles per gallon for your air conditioning unit or a heat pump. A heat pump, the SEER applies to the heat pump for cooling and heating. Um, and so a higher SEER. So if you're talking about SEER and efficiency, the higher the number, the more efficient it is, and the lower is your electricity bill. But those units are typically more expensive. So you have a upfront cost, but over the long operational duration of these systems, they're just more efficient. And so there's ways that you can calculate and see what that means. So that's SEER. I want to make sure that you guys are covered on that. The second one is AFUE. And this is the rating of the heating system. So if you have a gas furnace, if you have fuel oil, this is essentially how much of that fuel are you really burning? And so a high efficiency, it's kind of like the analogy I'm using here is batting average, right? If you have 100 baseballs coming at you, how many of those are you going to actually hit and come in contact with? And AFUE is the same thing. So if you have a 85% AFUE, what happens to the rest of the percentage? What happens to that? That's lost because the system is only 85% efficient in burning that fuel. So a 90 to a 98% AFUE is really good, and that has cost savings associated with it. So there's then the other issue of, is your system sized appropriately for your home? This, we recommend you contact a mechanical person. You know, again, if you're buying a home without a contingency, have the mechanical guy come in with you, or take pictures of the labels of, I mean, most people won't know. So the ideal thing is to grab a mechanical person. It's a significant cost, right? A mechanical unit, if it has to get swapped out. So you could go in excess of over $20,000, right? To swap out systems. And so this is an important thing where you could grab a mechanical person, go in there, say, hey, take a look at these. Is this sized appropriately for this home? If it's not, hey, you know, we got to talk about this. It's important for systems to be regularly maintained. That maintenance also ensures that they're running in a safe manner, right? The carbon monoxide that we talked about, if it's a gas furnace, someone's looking at that and testing it. The filters are changed regularly so that that blower fan is running efficiently and air is effectively going through the home. During summertime, if you don't change those filters, what happens? You end up with condensation all over your mechanical room floor. So just because air is not appropriately flowing, and so it's important to change those filters. And you know, if you have this ducting, is air blowing through it efficiently? If it could be blowing through it efficiently, but then it's running through a bulkhead inside of your garage, and that ducting is not insulated. Make sure that ducting is insulated so that you're not wasting that energy. All right. I have several links here. We actually created an app for you guys, courtesy of AI. It was actually AI's idea, not ours, which is weird, but that was cool. You guys can click on this link. There's a calculator on there, and live testing is bad. So we'll have to look at that. But that link will work, and you can there's a little quiz for you, there's a little survey, and then there's a calculator where you can actually look at the specs of a unit based on square footage and things like that. It's really high level, really high level. And then it'll tell you where the systems have effective capacity in conditioning your home. It's pretty cool. And then if you have any other questions regarding air tightness of your home or insulation, you can always contact us and we'll put you in touch with people that we feel you should be talking to. There's another thing, Tran has a savings calculator. Click on that. It'll show you the units and how much potential savings you can get based on your zip code. So definitely check that out. That's for you guys. Hope that helps. Okay, since we're talking about appliances, water heaters. I have an almost teenager and he uses a lot of hot water. So I'm sure as you guys do. And so usage is one thing, but also having energy efficient appliances is another. So what are certain things that newer technology tends to be more efficient? We talked about AFUE, the same thing applies here. How efficient is that water heater if it's gas in burning that fluid? If it's electric, how old are those heating elements? How long does it take to heat up the water? Are they efficient enough? And so typically newer appliances are more efficient. There are other things that you can do with a regular water heater. You can put a recirculating pump in there so it continuously ensures that water gets circulated through the entire system. And that ensures that there is a stable temperature throughout the system, which potentially can have your water heater run less. Some people say that it can actually help the water heater last longer because the temperature isn't going like this and that the heating elements are, running at a regular basis. Another thing that we love, another sort of appliance is tankless, which is on the right over here. We love those because, for one, you essentially have infinite hot water, and two, it does run on a regular basis, but on a much smaller capacity just to heat the water that's inside of it. They also come with recirculating pumps built in, most of them, so that water all the time in your system stays at a certain temperature. All right. Let's see. Windows and doors, another important thing. Um, oops. We have a lot of content. It's a lot of uh sorry guys, I'm trying to move this window out of my way. Okay. Um so we have some stuff here, but that has nothing to do with Windows. But in general, look for windows if they have frost or condensation between them. We talked about windows if you have appropriate insulation in your walls, but then your windows are compromised, or if you have single pane windows, that's not good. So windows definitely have to be they're one of the major sources of air infiltration and um, uh, temperature change in a home. And you can feel drafts. If you have difficulty opening and closing windows, that's a problem, and that can potentially lead to sealing issues. If you see, peeling paint or water stains on the window and things like these are all things that show that the window has been potentially compromised, and it could have air leaks, it could have broken seals, and so forth. And so it's important that windows are replaced. Um, how do you know if your windows are leaking, right? One thing that you can do, and please be careful, um, is hold a candle near the window and see if the flame is moving significantly. And if it is, then, you can potentially identify air leaks. You look for gaps around windows, especially in older homes that you're purchasing. Look at the casing, look at the frame of the window, see if there's any open gaps. Look on the outside, see if any caulk is missing. If caulk is missing, then water could be entering the home. It could be damaging the envelope of the home. And it could also be introducing air into the home. So those are important. And then, obviously there's common sense fixes that you can do with windows. They're a big spend. So for folks who can't address them, you know, uh, caulking is a quick fix, putting weather stripping in. Some folks have put, and you don't see this much anymore, but with older homes, these one-story ramblers, a lot of folks put storm windows. Those are actually quite effective. Homes that have single pane window, when you put that storm window in, it creates an air gap between the single pane window and that storm window, and it actually works fairly well. But we recommend that windows be replaced wholesale. Curtains, they go a long ways. Um, but as far as long-term considerations, what we consider the correct route is put in replacement double pane or triple pane windows that come with uh, gas in between them that provides additional R value insulation so that you don't have that temperature change. There is E-glass, low E-glass, so that light comes through the window and but heat is reflected out. And so those are effective. The gas that I mentioned, it can either be argon or krypton. They provide the insulation in the windows. And there's different types of the framing of the window does matter too. So if you get vinyl and fiberglass, typically what we've experienced, and this applies to doors as well, is that they are more efficient. They don't transfer as much heat in or cold in as aluminum windows. If you get a aluminum frame window and you touch the aluminum during winter, you can sense the temperature difference. And obviously making sure that the workmanship of the install is correct so that you don't end up purchasing expensive windows, but then the workmanship is not good. Get Energy Star certified windows. Again, multiple panes. The orientation of the window, if you're building a new home, this is an important one too. When it comes to design, making sure that the orientation is correct. So you can load up on windows on south side of the home, if you're in the northern hemisphere, and I guess north if you're in southern hemisphere, and to make sure that you're getting efficient light into the home. That helps a lot. And UV resistant coatings and so forth. And your window vendor can help you through this. All right, so gaps, some examples of exaggerated gaps under the doors, ducting, gaps. What do they do if you have combustible materials in the home? It can actually impact the efficiency in burn and exhaust of combustibles in your home. And that's a problem because you can actually end up with carbon monoxide poisoning in your home if you have too many gaps and that exhaust is not escaping. So you have to make sure you talk to experts about that and make sure that's not happening in your home. Again, older homes, just going over this. If you're looking at buying an older home, watch out for air leaks. Check the insulation. Look at the appliances like HVAC, water heaters, and just make sure that those things are considered. So energy efficiency in general, if you're in a home and it doesn't feel comfortable, it's most likely because it's leaky, it's not being conditioned effectively. And so typically energy efficiency equals comfort and safety for us. Obviously you can crank up the thermostat, try to get it comfortable that way, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, keeping the temperature of the thermostat at a certain appropriate level and have the home remain comfortable. So these two, a green home is equal to comfort. It is safe, from carbon monoxide poisoning, mold, dust. It's quiet and it's appropriately conditioned, and it's the way to go for our future. And that's it. So it got kind of technical. It can get kind of dry and boring when it comes to energy efficiency, but I hope this helped. If you have any questions, comments, you can always email us and you can phone us and we're happy to address. So we have one question, and the question is, what strategies you use to engage homeowners in energy savings practices after initial building process is complete? So good question, Nima. Ideally, so this needs to come up during the design process. In fact, it should come up before design is addressed, or starts. And so what we like to do is we talk about must-haves and like-to-haves. Even before we start talking about the design, we talk about, why do you want to do this, right? And so that energy efficient home that I showed you earlier, one of the client's priorities was, I want a home that'll last for 100 years or more. I want a home that'll be absolutely efficient. And so the design started from there. Now, before we met with them, we were energy, very energy aware. We are Energy Star certified. And so, we were able to guide them through. So my recommendation is that energy should always be included, energy efficiency, in all dialogue, whether it's a new home build, whether it's a purchase of an existing home, whether it's doing an addition to a home. Energy efficiency always needs to be in play. So I hope that answers your question. Good question. Any other questions? All right, well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining. And like I said, we'll post this on our website, and we'll also send an email out letting people know where to go to access this stuff. If you have any suggestions for future topics, send them our way. Absolutely. We're happy to host them. And stay tuned for January and February. We have additional topics coming. Wish everyone a wonderful day. Thank you for joining.